one of the things that I find with like being alone or feeling lonely, oftentimes like we feel lonely because we're not feeling connected
Hmm.
as much as we like desire, right? And so especially maybe post-pandemic, like we are all collectively feeling very lonely.
Hmm.
Um, and that comes up a lot. It's a very common feeling and experience for many people. And so like we get into these conversations of like, well, I don't feel like I have friends, or I do have friends, and the friends I do have, I don't feel like I'm not super close to them, and the list goes
Yeah.
on, right? And so I often tell people like, um, it's more so like, do I feel connected? And it could just only be one person. If you feel like emotionally connected to at least one person, that tends to fulfill a lot of that like loneliness feeling. So when you are
Yeah.
alone, it doesn't feel so lonely.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show and saying yes.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me.
you're welcome. Can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you be, all of the
Yeah.
juice?
I've been thinking about this question because is an obvious question that gets asked, and it's always
Yeah.
like a loaded question. But so yes, my name is Suyapa. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a mental health clinician in California and in Nevada. I provide therapy for adults that are dealing with anxiety or depression or trauma. More specifically, I work with adults that the term is called SIBS, and that stands for people who have siblings that are struggling with mental health or addiction, or they have some kind of disability. I
Hmm.
have life or living experience with that. And so leading to, I guess, who I am, that is part of my identity as well, is I'm the eldest sister of three. I have a sister with intellectual disability and a brother who has bipolar and struggles with substance misuse. So there is a lot of layers to that. But I would say that that's pretty much shaped me who I am, I guess, today.
Hmm.
And yeah, I live in San Diego. Um, and I love going out to eat, trying new foods, going to the beach, hanging with friends, love dancing. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of me.
I love that. And thank you for including like personal things because
Yeah.
typically I say, "Who are you?" and people immediately tell me what they do. And I'm like, "No, I want to know, like, who are you?
Who really are you?
Who
Yeah.
are you? What do you?" And I love that you like trying new food because
Oh,
I'm
yes.
definitely a foodie as well. And you're in San Diego. I'm in Palmdale.
Oh, okay. Not
Yeah, so
too
we're both in
far.
Cali. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like probably like 2 or 3 hours, but
Yeah, a
still,
couple
California.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you open to digging in a little bit deeper to your story and how it all played out, how it affected you, both
Yeah.
mentally and possibly even physically? Because, our mental health is connected to our physical health, which is
Yeah.
the sleep thing that we were talking about.
We were
It's
just talking
everything's
about.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's see, where do I start? So like I said, I am the eldest. And uh, my dad is Mexican, my mom is Honduran. So in the Latin culture, like already the eldest female of the family is known to be more of like a second mom or a caretaker as it is. So I guess you can only imagine how much more, I guess, pressure or expectations were put on me as
Mm,
a child, being the eldest of two other children that have higher needs than myself. So I could now looking back, I could really see how as a child, I had to like mature pretty quickly. I had to grow up fast. Um, I, in school, I was very quiet, very reserved. Even teachers would say like she's pretty mature for her age. I mean, once I got to high school, it's a little different story. But yeah, for the most part, I just knew I carried this responsibility and that pressure to be, quite frankly, like the perfect child.
mm,
Like I knew that I didn't have space or room to like mess up, or I had to get it right the first time. And not that like my parents directly said these things to me, it was almost like indirectly or implied, or I just took it upon myself because I witnessed like my parents really stressed, like really absent, mentally or emotionally. My dad worked a lot, so even for him, physically absent. So, the message as a child that I received is like, I have to take care of shit on my own,
right.
like I have to figure it out on my own. I can't really like depend on others to like meet my needs. So growing up, I think I was very like hyper independent, I guess you can say. And in turn, I think you draw certain kind of partners because of that. And I would say I have my fair share of partners that I felt obligated or responsible for their well-being or having to take care of them. And it is hard to shake that off because
Mm,
it's so embedded, right? In like my almost like my DNA, so to speak. I mean,
yeah.
and I'm a therapist, right? So it's just like, it's a lot of taking care of where I wasn't taking care of myself. And I think to your question, as far as like the connection to the body, like that's very much prevalent where, we like do neglect our own like mental, emotional, and physical well-being for sure. So yeah.
Yeah. And so then your siblings, how did they I don't want to say how they play into your story because obviously you grew up with them, but how did they kind of affect maybe how you were doing things in the world?
Yeah, so there's definitely pros and cons. I would say, like, for example, like my little sister, she was born with a lot of physical health issues too. For example, she had to have heart surgery like within a week that she was born.
Mhm.
She was born with a cleft lip and palate. She has intellectual disability. So even though she's chronologically an adult right now, she's probably maybe like a 12-year-old. So growing up, I mean, I knew hospitals. Like that's where we would spend a lot of our nights. Um, my mom at one point quit her job so she could be a full-time caregiver, and really for my sister and for my brother as well. My brother was more, I think back then we really didn't know what was happening with him. A lot of uh, professionals would diagnose him with like ADHD, for example. He was always getting in trouble,
Mm,
getting kicked out of class, school. So my mom was being called for that kind of stuff, and also dealing with like my sister's health. So that was a lot to take in, and I think from the eldest and like absorbing all of that. And so I think what I was saying earlier, it kind of goes to show like how I was like, well, my shit's nothing compared to this. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, I guess I have to figure it out on my own. Like my parents already have enough on their plate that like my stuff like isn't significant compared to these things, you know? I mean, we had social workers coming in the house, we had speech therapists, occupational therapists. I mean, I grew up changing my sister's G-tube because when she was born, because of the cleft lip and palate, she wasn't able to eat as like a typical baby could.
Right.
So yeah, we had to feed her through a tube, you know? And so me as a young kid was helping my mom, like changing the gauze, cleaning that up, feeding her that way. So like not typical children have that kind of exposure or responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I had to grow up fairly quickly, and be
Yeah.
another mother figure.
I want to ask you a question based on my own experience. I was a latchkey kid and I was put in charge of my brother, even though I'm the youngest, because he was the problem child. And so for me, it was I, like looking back now, I felt so isolated and alone
Yeah.
all the time. So I'm wondering if it was the same for you.
100%. Yeah. And it's also like you could have, I mean, you had friends, I'm sure, right? Like I had
Hmm.
friends. And it was a duality of like that's my escape, so to speak. And also though felt alone with like that's something that they can't really relate to, right? And I can't relate to them in certain aspects of each other's lives. Like at
Yeah.
home, it just looks very different, you know? And so yeah, it left me feeling very lonely too, or like no one understands me, no one gets me, like no one
Hmm.
knows, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally relate to that. Even as an adult too, sometimes, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna share, like, for you and the listeners, like full transparency, I've been working on my relationship to being alone. Just be and part of it that's come up was what I just told you about, being home alone when I'm 10 years old, taking care of my 12-year-old brother. So,
Yeah.
and that's part of it. And then growing up and feeling, also, I do tend to be hyper independent, even though I'm married, I have a child, I take care of my dad, I do all these things, and it gets lonely.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to change the label of lonely, not change the label, but just like be okay being alone.
Hmm.
I'm trying to just be okay being alone. And it's funny too, because I lived by myself in an apartment for 2 years. I didn't even have a cat.
You're very alone. Did
Yeah.
you enjoy that though?
Huh?
Did you enjoy living alone?
For the most part, but I was lonely because I'm a social introvert. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm the same way. I actually do enjoy alone time. I mean, had lived on my own for quite some time. However, it almost like a little too much sometimes. I because for me was like part of the work that I do too. It's like I don't have mental emotional capacity for like anything else, you know?
Mm,
I mean, that has changed over time, but I guess like um one of the things that I find with like being alone or feeling lonely, oftentimes like we feel lonely because we're not feeling connected
mhm,
as much as we like desire, right? And so like, and this is something like I talk a lot with even the folks that I work with because I do feel like especially maybe post pandemic, like we are all collectively feeling very lonely.
mhm,
Um, and that comes up a lot. It's a very common feeling and experience for many people. And so, like, we get into these conversations of like, well, I don't feel like I have friends, or I do have friends, and the friends I do have, I don't feel like I'm not super close to them, and the list goes
yeah.
on, right? And so I often tell people like, um, it's more so like, do I feel connected? And it could just only be one person. You know, if you feel like emotionally connected to at least one person, that tends to fulfill a lot of that like loneliness feeling. So when you are
Yeah.
alone, it doesn't feel so lonely, if that makes sense, because you just have this like almost like a foundation that has been filled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's helped me a lot is that I do work with people all day. Like I'm a coach and I do interviews. That's kind of what I do. And so that piece has helped me not feel the loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, I'm a hugger. Like I still crave like hanging out physically with friends. And where I am, I just don't have physical friends in the flesh, but like all the
Yeah.
people I'm closest to are online and in other states and some
Yeah.
in other countries. So
Mhm.
it's like this weird um dynamic is the word coming into my head, but yeah, it's
Mhm.
just this weird like I'm not lonely and I'm alone and
Yeah.
I have friends and yet I don't have anyone to hug.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
very like uh, what's the word? Like there's a lot of dualities, I guess, to that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And I'm very big on community
Mm.
care. I know that we often do talk a lot about self-care, which I think is important too. However, I have unlearned to be hyper independent, right? So with that comes with opening myself up to have a more connected community. And I think since I've done that, that has like literally like healed me in many places of myself that I didn't even think I needed it. And
Hmm.
it's almost like I felt a sense of freedom to put my shield down, or have to be strong all the time and have to figure it out on my own, and ask for help, receive help. Like all of those things were extremely difficult for me. And I think once I was able to accept and acknowledge that we do, like, or I do need people in my life.
Hmm.
Like I like us humans are built for connection. Like we are built to need each other. And so before I think my older version would reject that idea or be like, ew,
Ew.
you know, like, no, thank you, you know. And I think because experiences from my past when I thought I was opening up and being vulnerable, I almost like I felt like I was being let down. And so I was like, well, why should I try again then? Like this is what I'm going to be met with is being disappointed. So like I'm not gonna try again, you know? So I think now though it's I'm at a place where the people that are like my chosen family, my community, even my like blood family that I'm close to, I know that they will be there or they have been there for me and they do show up. So that fulfills me in many ways that I didn't think I knew I needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that we're having this conversation because healthy relationships is another thing that affects our health.
Hmm.
Health is so much more than just what we eat and how we move. It's like, are we sleeping? Are we getting enough sleep, like we were talking about before? It's connections to other people, because that's how we're made. We're made to connect to other people. Um,
Hmm.
what do your environments look like? Are they cluttered and cluttering up your head, or is your cluttered head cluttering up your space?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this conversation of connection because it's really big and it affects the mental health, and then the mental health affects the physical health. And again,
Yep.
everything is just connected to each other.
Interconnected. Hmm. Yeah, it's something that I do think we overlook at times, right? Like we could think oh, I just need to just focus on my physical health and do all these things, but not really recognizing the connection between our emotional and mental well-being and the things that influence our emotional and mental well-being. And I would say one of the most significant things that does is like the people that are around us or the people that we connect with. Um, this one really well-known couples therapist says, she says, relationships define your quality of life. And it's so true. And, that is why we have to be very aware and careful of like who we let in, so to speak, and who we are surrounding ourselves with. Because if you're in a relationship, platonic or not, that is toxic, unhealthy, it's going to leave you very drained
Yeah.
and tired and depressed and anxious, and the list goes on, So, yes, it's very much interconnected for sure.
Yeah. And then if and when we have those toxic relationships, then our walls go up.
Yep.
And we're like, if we had this one relationship, then nobody's safe.
Yeah, and I think it all like almost reaffirms the thought of this is why I don't like try to connect with other people, or this is why I
Yeah.
don't let people in, or this is the reason why, I do need to have my walls up to protect myself, So it reinforces is the word I was looking for, this idea that we can't be letting our walls down and we need to, protect ourselves at all times. And I think there's pros and cons to that too, right?
Hmm.
Because the pros is like, sure, like you won't let anyone else in to hurt you, but you also won't let anyone else to like love or care for you. And I think it's
Yeah.
really trying to like learn and find a balance of how can we, and this I speak from my own personal experience too, which is like, how can I learn or relearn how to reconnect with my inner wisdom and my self-trust? Because when we go through, relationships that are draining, it can make us question ourselves or doubt ourselves. So therefore, we're like unsure or uncertain if we, meet another person, how am I going to avoid not repeating the same thing? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I talk about the same idea, but on the subject of diets, like
Mm,
people go on these fad diets and then they gain all the weight back because we're not meant to go on diets. Like it, yeah. And then they gain all the weight back and sometimes even more, and then they blame themselves and not the stupid diet that they went on. And so then
yeah.
they get this lack of self-trust as you're talking about, and they don't trust themselves around food. They don't trust themselves going on another diet, and it's like this cycle. And so those are
Yep.
typically the people that I work with. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's this,
do you find that that also shows up in different areas of their lives?
yeah, because it's decision making,
Mhm.
and because it's their decision and it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, so they labeled it as wrong rather than just, okay, this doesn't work, let me try something else. It's
Right.
like this self blame, and
Yep.
then, I don't trust myself anymore. And it shows up in eating, it shows up in relationships, it shows up in business sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's so crazy how, because we don't want to be wrong. And
Mhm.
sometimes that'll freeze somebody into not making a decision at all, which is still a
Yes.
decision.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that, kind of going back to what I was mentioning earlier with like my experience growing up, it's like there was no space to get it wrong.
Mm,
So like, so if it's like it's almost like you do or don't, like do or die. Like,
yeah.
It is, I know that's exaggerated like comparison, but that's how sometimes it could feel, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like there's no way I can mess this up. Like I have to get it right. And if I don't, then it's such like a yeah, like a lot of self-blame, a lot of like guilt or shame of like I'm not good enough, or why didn't I think about that? Or now these people are gonna judge me in this way, or now like I'm gonna make other people upset with me. And I think it's almost this notion or narrative of like, what are other people going to think about
Yeah.
me, and how much that has a hold on a lot of us,
Yeah. I try to teach on separating the person from the performer. Um,
Mm,
because so often we do the thing, we do it wrong, and then it means something's wrong with me rather than something was just off with the decision I made or the performance that I gave, or I failed at this thing. And instead of looking at it as a learning experience, it's I'm a failure rather than I failed
yep,
at this thing.
correct.
That,
Yeah. Like we wrap our identity with that
mm-hmm.
versus like separating and say, like, there's a difference between like, I made a mistake versus I am a mistake.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that is, sometimes I do find that there's like a deeper root when it comes to that. Like I always tell people I don't believe like we were all born with like a lot of these negative like narratives that
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of learn that are given to us. And especially as kids, I feel like we're like sponges, so we absorb so much. And that means also the things that don't really serve us, but they follow us into adulthood and they still play in our heads, right? Like the same narrative starts playing, and it's so hard to unlearn that or change the narrative when that's been your narrative for like decades. You know?
Yeah.
So I always tell people like one of the things I'm gonna require is for you to be patient with yourself, because this is a journey. Like it's gonna take its
Mm,
time, it's not gonna change, it's not gonna happen overnight. And it's sometimes it's like the baby steps that matter versus like the like one big step. Like we have to like work our way up slowly versus like
yeah.
assuming like it's gonna happen like this. So yeah,
Yeah.
patience and compassion.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to remind people of is the time's going to pass anyway. How do you want to
Yeah.
spend that time? Like there's so many times I've heard, well, it's going to take so long. The time's going to pass anyway. So, what are you going to do with it?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to, I mean, I know I tell people too, I'm like, I've been there where I wish I just had like, the movie Click, I think that's what it's called with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Like I know like sometimes we wish we could just have a remote control and like just press fast forward in life and just be like at the end, but unfortunately that doesn't exist in real life. And we, sometimes if we don't like allow ourselves to go through that journey, we miss out on other lessons too along the
Yeah.
way. And sometimes like it's hard to see that when you're not, and I say this more so when people come to me when they're in a very like almost desperate place in their life
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, I need something, I need a change now. And so they're already coming in with a lot of pressure on themselves, which makes anxiety even more bigger.
Yeah.
And so I always say like, I get it. Like you're at a place where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, so to speak. However, like I'm gonna need you to be really patient with yourself and show yourself compassion because it's not gonna happen overnight. It's not gonna be easy. You're gonna, have highs and some lows and not allow the lows to discourage you because and I say this for personal experience too, and more often than not people are really receptive to that and almost like
Mm-hmm.
okay, I guess I can like all I can do is just do my best and show up
Yeah.
day by day. So, and I'm like, yep, that's all we can do.
Yep. Yeah. I want to ask you, what has been your biggest either aha moment or biggest like, oh, I got it now? Like, what's been your biggest moment?
Man, I think the most recent would be, it's kind of something what you were alluding to earlier, which is that in a more, I guess, bigger um, context. But when you mention like when people blame themselves when it's instead of blaming the diet itself that it
Mhm.
wasn't a right fit, right? For me, it's like looking at in a bigger picture as far as like how does society has influenced the way that I have viewed myself or thought that the things that I'm supposed to be doing by now should be and not just society but like culturally like religious spirituality, like all of these different I don't know how to the word, but like things
Yeah.
that are
We'll go with
like
things.
things that are just like coming at me that I'm absorbing them, right? And thinking like this is what I should be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, I need to make sure I like check these boxes without really stopping and asking myself like who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
Like is this something that like I never once really asked myself like is this what you really want? Like not why are you doing it? Like, and then I'm just like going and going and just thinking that, well, isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing? Right. And then finding out that like, boom, like just everything crashes and burns. But I feel like that's what was needed for myself, like for
Hmm.
everything to crash and burn. So I can just like, it's almost like ashes. Like I needed all
Yeah.
this I can like really step into my full, like really full, like authentic version of myself and be like, I'm no longer bounded by all of these societal expectations or
Hmm.
cultural expectations or religious expectations that have been put on me. Like I calling the shots now, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been the most like freeing thing that I've experienced, I would say in the last like year or two.
Mm. That's really
Mhm.
cool that you bring that up because I was having a conversation with one of my clients last night that's similar. And
Mhm.
so she was like being really successful in all these jobs, and then she'd get to a certain point and then quit. And then she'd
Mm,
be really successful in the next job and then get to a certain point and quit. And I was like, so many times we have all this success, but it's not as our authentic selves, and it's misaligned with who we are. And so, yes, it's successful on the outside, but it's not successful on the inside, and therefore
right.
you're wanting to shut down because it's not who you are. And so she was just like, "Oh, yeah." So it's like it's almost I'd rather you I don't really like using the word fail, but I'd rather you fail
Mhm.
what you're doing that is authentically you than succeed as not authentically you, because that's
Yep.
also in my eyes a failure.
Well, yeah, because in turn you feel unfulfilled, you feel
Mm,
anxious, depressed, and kind of going back to like the mental health stuff and then affecting your physical health, right?
yeah.
And it's like you like at least for me, like it's almost like feeling like you're trapped, so to speak, right? And it's like recognizing my own power that I have in the ability of like within my choices that I make. And so I think that's when I started slowly but surely taking a lot of risk, I would say, in
Mm,
my eyes. Like, for example, like I'm in private practice. Before, I was always working for someone else, whether it was like government jobs or nonprofits, the list goes on. And so had always wanted to go on my own, but I was always too scared. And I
Mm,
was always like, oh, I don't know, that's just too overwhelming. It sounds like a lot. And granted, some of it is, right? But I think I just got to a point where I'm like, I need to start making choices that feel aligned with me, as scary as it sounds, as hard as it sounds. I need to really believe in myself to be able to say, like, yeah, that's going to be hard, but you're going to kill it, you
mm-hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
so once I took that leap and I started making other changes and cutting things off, and everything just started just aligning. And once that started aligning, my whole mental and emotional well-being just completely shifted in me. And now I'm just like a way more confident person, a way more self-assured, way more connected to my inner wisdom, my self-trust, and it's like I'm glad too, like how you said the failures, like making mistakes, right? That like this thing that I thought I was supposed to be doing, or multiple things that crashed and burned and failed, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
I'm glad it
Yeah.
did. If it wasn't for that, I would have still been trapped.
Yeah. It's
Oh my,
relieving.
yes. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm kind of glad. And like, yes, I'm not perfect. Like,
Yes.
I'm allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
They don't define me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that.
And just to like rewind and speak to what you were saying, it is hard when you branch out on your own. Like
It
for
is.
me, I'm a good coach, I'm a good trainer, I'm a good teacher, but I suck at the business part of it. Like
Same.
I've been working on an email newsletter for like a week. I'm like, oh my gosh, because
And you wear a
I'm
lot of hats,
figuring
right?
out, yeah, like I'm good at creating things, but what I'm doing now is figuring out how to create this thing, have people give me their email address in exchange for this thing, and then send them the thing. If it's not as simple as it
Yeah.
sounds, it's like and I'm not quite in a place yet to have like a web developer and all that fun stuff. So
Mhm.
I'm doing it on my own and it's hard, but it's worth it because it's aligned.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then in turn, like, I mean, I don't know how long ago you've made that shift, but like, do you feel different, like a different sense of self?
The shift of
Like, like being on your own, like going on your own.
oh yeah. Yeah, I quit my job last September. Um,
That's when I did too.
nice. Cheers.
Yeah, we hit our 1 year.
Yeah, like long story short, is a very toxic environment and I was a shipping manager and like I was successful because I had like the fancy manager title and I was running a crew, but it was toxic and the company, I don't want to talk too much shit, but um
Well, no, I
like
get
the
it.
only reason I was in that position was when COVID hit and I didn't know if I was going to have a job. So I kind of just whoop, like kind of like snuck into this position and then I moved up and I'm like, yeah, I have this title and I moved up in a company. I don't even want to be working here. Like I put coaching and my podcast and everything went on hold for like 3 years. And I finally got to a point where like I okay, yeah, I'm making really good money, but at what cost? I don't have a life.
Yeah,
So,
and especially like working in a very unhealthy, like toxic work environment. It's like we were talking about earlier. It's like it drains you, and it's like you can't even like. And we spend so much time at work too, so it's like
yeah.
we really want to continue doing this to myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you two like took that leap of faith and took that risk, because you're right, like it's not easy, yet it's so worth it. And
Yeah.
I'm sure like the more that we continue to like make aligned choices, things will continue to fall into place. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't have done that had we not had my husband's income. Um, but I literally cut our income in half, but we know how to be Pope. I mean, we're not poor. Like now it's just like, everything's taken care of, but we just don't have the extras that we like. But I don't know if we didn't have his income, I don't know what I'd be doing right now.
And that's why I say like it is really hard, and I think it depends from person to person because
Hmm.
everyone's life situation is different. Like I don't have kids. I'm not responsible for any other like human being, you know? So like to me, like that was it could be a easier shift than someone, yeah, that has kids or has a significant other or things of that nature that you have to like think about. So it just depends on the person and like where they're at. Um, I know I started very part-time doing private practice, so I was like, well, I need still some kind of stability income-wise, so let me just do it part-time and dip my toes, and then did that for like a year, and then finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in full throttle, full
Nice.
time. Yeah,
Nice.
it's been really nice and not looking back.
Well, I have one more question for you, and I
Mhm.
ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be? If you haven't already said it.
Um, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that we this is probably because the field that I'm in, but I've been seeing and I've been there too myself where it's like we go into seeking help or therapy per se to like get fixed, quote unquote, or heal, quote unquote. And really, I think it's more so of learning to embrace ourselves, like for where we're at in
Hmm.
every season that we go through, to show up compassionate and patient with ourselves and giving ourselves grace versus like these are all the wrong things with me that I need to like change or fix. And it's like, okay, great that you have some awareness of some of the things you want to work on. However, if you don't have like this self-acceptance, it's going to be hard to really look in the mirror and dig into these things that might be, hard to talk about because we might judge ourselves too much, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. So I guess all in all to say is um, to really embrace yourselves, to really work more towards self-acceptance, because you're uniquely you and you have a lot of um, great things to share with the world. So yeah, more of like self-acceptance, more than anything.
Awesome. Beautiful beasts, Suyapa signing off. Until next time.